Welcome to Flame On. I'm Brian. I am your host for our Rainbow Spotlight series where we talk to queer and allied creators from all over the world, literally all over the world these days. I am so pleased to be joined today by my dear acquaintance. We have met at least once or twice, I think, in person. But the queer comics writer, Joe Glass. Welcome, Joe. It is I'm so happy for you to be joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I was trying to remember. We were talking before the recording started. I'm like, I know I got my copy of The Pride from you, from your hands in San Diego, and I'm pretty sure you were at one of the New York Comic Cons that I was at. Anyway, you get all over because you have been doing this for how long have you been writing comics now?
It's at least 10 years now. Wow. I mean, technically, if you think like in terms of writing them, like obviously I was starting to write them long before things came out, but I think like it's about 10 years since my first going to a Comic Con, selling comic books and stuff. So probably at least 10 years as an officially out there comic creators, but like writing for even longer than that before that. So
that's so outstanding. And yeah, I've been following your work for a long time. We're going to talk about most of your work. I think we'll cover a lot. But I want to start with the project that is about to launch. Actually, when this goes up, I believe it will have launched. What's the official launch date?
So we're officially launching Tuesday, the 2nd of February. It's a 2 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, which I believe, if I remember correctly, is 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time, I think, something like that. So yeah, it's Tuesday though. So at some point Tuesday you'll be able to see. But as well as that, there's going to be a follow link which people can do now on Kickstarter, and they get a notification as soon as it goes live. So don't worry, you can't miss it if you hit that follow link.
So we're talking about The Miracles, which is your new work with Vince Underwood, Vinny Underwood. Vince. He goes by Vince.
Vince.
Who I actually will be talking to along with this, though that one will be live right before the Kickstarter launches on our Monday time slot. But I have one of the pages you've released from it with just gorgeous artwork from Vince, and then this is the link down here, as you can see in the lower third. That is the Kickstarter link you can go to now and follow. But when you see this, you can probably go there and back it, which is so exciting. So let's talk about, I'm going to switch back. Let's talk about how this project came together, what it's about, and then, how people, obviously if you've ever done Kickstarter, you know how to support comics, but how did this all come about?
It's actually something I've been working on for a long time. Miracles is a story I've been sort of trying to figure out since the start of the Pride. So literally 10 years I've been working on this idea in some form or other. The most difficult, I think, thing for me was trying to figure out what format I wanted it to be in. So it's been like a 6-issue series, a 4-issue series, a 12-issue maxi series, and all that, like as I try to work it out. And in that time, like there's actually been numerous people involved in the project to possibly try and be like pitch it to publishers or something when we think like, oh, should we do this as a series? And it never quite seemed quite right. So obviously I focused on the Pride, and Pride was coming out. That was all going great. But the Miracles was always something I just wanted to tell. It's kind of a different kind of superhero story, because whereas the Pride is very much a team book, and about these individual superheroes and their sort of found family kind of thing, this was a book about families, like an actual sort of family and sort of family secrets and things like that. And it was just an idea I had since way back when, just been like, I really want to do this. So like there've been people coming in and out of the project left, right, and center when I kept on sort of trying to figure out how exactly to make it work. And then finally Vince came on board, and with his help, I kind of came to the decision of what the perfect format for it was. And it's basically going to be like an original graphic novel. So it's a 120-page original graphic novel. So the longest single form story, which I've done to date. We then, obviously, the rest of the team were coming on board. So we've got Harry Saxon, who's going to be doing our colors, and Hassan Osman Helho, who's doing, I'm wow, I'm pretty certain I mispronounced that then. That's Ultimate Nail How, who's doing our letters. And like we've also got an awesome cover artist who I'm going to keep a little secret for a little bit longer because we're going to announce it on the actual comic Kickstarter launch. But yeah, I'm very excited about who's doing the cover for us as well. But yeah, it finally sort of made sense, and I'm finally like ready to get this story out there. And like Vince has been turning in the most incredible artwork. So it just finally felt like it was right, and like it finally all come together, and it's the right time to do it. I would say actually we were initially going to do it last year, but then COVID hit, and that kind of changed things up a bit, and it, in a way probably helped. It gave us another sort of way, another chance to sort of take a step back and have a look at how we were going to do things, particularly with concerns of like how crowdfunding is going to work in the midst of all this. So yeah, we kind of took a step back, jigged up the story a little bit, made it, I think, even stronger, and just really come together with something which I think is even more beautiful than ever now.
So there's another page from Vince's beautiful artwork. And yeah, and Harry Saxon's colors are also outstanding. I really like, I'm getting sort of a McKelvey vibe from Vince's artwork.
Yeah, I've had similar feelings in the past as well. Just feel like it, which kind of works because a big part of the story is about being the difference between a comic book characters in a real world kind of thing. So like McKelvey, Vince's style works really well to that because it's a kind of it's a very grounded take. It's at times quite photorealistic, so it just works really well. And Harry's colors have just been superb, just fleshing all of it out.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I really like. I keep messing with things. I really like the concept of taking comic book characters and putting them in the real world. It's very Grant Morrison in my mind as far as exploring this thought, idea, reality kind of interaction.
Yeah.
So and then of course it's great for Fish Out of Water and Stranger in a Strange Land, that kind of stuff. So with the story, and we're not going to give away too much because it is just about to launch.
But like to keep some surprises.
Absolutely. I note that at least one of the panels seems to have some kind of a dating app featured in there.
There might be something along those lines in there, yeah.
Okay. I mean, is it a spoiler to suggest whether or not there is like, any kind of a queer focus? Is that something that's like, always going to be part of your work? Or is that something you're kind of like, I've done a lot. I mean, you've done a lot of great queer stories. So there's no obligation by any means, but is it something that you find just works itself in no matter what?
It's one of those things where I think at first I did used to think that this was going to be like a reveal. But then I've always quite proudly stated that any work I do is going to have queer characters and it's going to have like queer elements to it. So, and like for me as well, like when I'm telling stories, I kind of don't want those queer elements to be background things. Like I want them to be like, it's a main thing. Like I'm not trying to sort of hide anything away or anything. So it was kind of got to a point where I was just like, what? I think everyone's going to guess that I'm going to have a queer character in here. And that they're probably going to be a main character. And it's fair to say that, yeah, one of the main characters in this book has a very particular queer story to tell. And it's actually one which I haven't as such tackled as yet. Which was another reason like why I really wanted to do Miracles and why the Miracles has been gestating in my head and in my work since the start of the Pride, because the Pride's very much like one set of queer stories and we get a lot in there, don't get me wrong, but even in the 17 comics we've done so far of the Pride, there's not enough room to get all aspects of the queer experience in there. So like the Miracles was a chance to get another aspect in, and one which I think a lot of people can go through and understand, and also not even if they're queer. Like it's I mean it's not too much to say because like say I've already given out the book's kind of about secrets and about family secrets. So the particular queer story aspect in this case is kind of a coming out experience, and sort of looking at why coming out can be difficult, why that's a secret but people still keep, and how it is that the nature of family secrets can make things difficult when we're maybe doing these secrets because we think we're protecting someone. So yeah, there's, without giving too much away, there's kind of a little bit of drama of that. Plus, one of the other elements I want to do in a sort of superhero family sort of story is that sort of soap opera drama element, and it was a chance to really get like my deep love for things like the OC and Buffy and like the teen drama aspects of shows like that into a story. So yeah, the way I've kind of always try and pitch it is that the Miracles is kind of like the Incredibles match meets the OC. So you get like teen family melodrama tied in with crazy superhero family action. So
Oh, interesting. That's a great idea, and I like that. I like that pitch for it, the OC. Which, admittedly, for our younger viewers, they're like, "Wait, the OC? Oh yeah." It's one of those things now. As I get older, and as there's more younger people entering the pop culture domain, that you see these references and touchstones, and you're like, "Yeah, you remember Dawson's Creek?" And some people are sitting there and go, "What?" You're like,
yeah, like
yeah.
I fully had someone at my day job. I was talking to it's for Christmas because Christmas not long gone, and I had a Gremlins t-shirt on, which is the best Christmas movie. And I mentioned it to a colleague and who is very young, and they legit had no idea what Gremlins was, and I was just like, man, I am old.
It's a natural part of life, and it excites me more, I think, than it used to really bother me. There's still moments where I go, ugh, but it's exciting to see. There's a YouTube, several YouTube series of people watching older to us, not that old, but
Cool.
and they get so excited. My boyfriend was telling me about one there. He was watching this YouTuber, and they were watching Forrest Gump, of all movies. Forrest Gump.
Really?
Had never heard of it before, previous to like someone saying, "Oh, you should watch this." Didn't know anything about it. They're living for it. It's like a reaction video. I mean, it's that sort of trope, but they love it and they're falling in love. It's just seeing, even like when we were, younger, and we were like learning about like classics of pop culture and literature and movies and everything. It's that same like tradition of just discovering all over again these classic things. So I love that you have a touchstone like OC. Which is still very relevant, in many people's lives.
I personally think so. I think the OC stands up pretty well. I mean, like, there are elements which are dated as hell, but I think it stands up pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. And then seeing, I don't remember his character name in the OC, but James Gordon in Gotham.
Oh, Ryan. He's in
Ryan.
The OC, yeah.
Yeah, and seeing and thinking about oh my gosh, he was this little petulant, adolescent, and going up into petulant James Gordon.
Yeah.
So
some people might get a little typecasted, I think. Yeah.
He's just got that face. He's got that glorious petulance face. So tell me about Vince. How did you? You said you kind of work with different artists on this. How did you meet Vince? How did you connect? And how did that whole kind of creative relationship, sort of form?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I can't even remember how it was we sort of started talking as such. Like, I became familiar. I think the first time I became familiar with his work was another Kickstarter project he did, and it was fantastic. I checked it out and read it. If I remember correctly, it's written by Jordan Clark, and it was superb. And it was a great comic, and I'm sure Vince is going to tell you all about it because it's one of the biggest things he's done, I think, to date. Which looks like, because they did really great on Kickstarter. Read the book and was like, I really like this, and the art is really great. And I guess we must have started talking from there. I think maybe we probably just were like in similar circles on Twitter and social media or something. And then I saw more and more of his artwork, and I was just like, yo, this is really good stuff. And we wanted to work together on something. And one of the artists who had been on The Miracles dropped out of it. And it was kind of changing format again. It was one of those stages where it was going from a digital only book to, I was like, I kind of want to do this in print actually. So yeah, it was kind of at that stage, and I think I finally just turned around and said, hey, I've got this idea. Do you mind if I show you? Like, a bunch of people have been on it, but like, it's never gone anywhere. Do you want to maybe take a look and see if you think this is for you? And that's when I showed him the original pitch for The Miracles, and he started sort of noodling on it, and before you knew it, like we were in. And then, like I say, that I think it was from there that we got Harry and Haas on involved. Haas might have been involved before. I can't remember when Haas came on board actually. So yeah, we kind of all came together, and the team all sort of really gelled really well. So creatively, it's just worked out perfectly. And like I said, I think it's really felt like now is the time for this book, because finally I've got like a whole team who are all gelling perfectly and turning out really great stuff.
Well, that's so exciting, and it's neat seeing these kind of projects come together through Twitter. Of course, you see that a lot.
Yeah,
I love going to Comic Cons and hanging out in the bars and sort of seeing projects like not come together, but certainly like the beginnings of artistic creative relationships
totally.
between writers and artists, or artists and colors, and publishers. It's one of those fun things to witness in small little bits. My favorite, I don't know if you've ever been. Did you ever go to Heroes in Charlotte, Heroes Con? It's a
Oh no,
smaller
I've never been.
show.
No, I've like in terms of like US cons, I've still only ever done New York Comic Con and SDCC. I really want to do more, and then of course, COVID.
Yeah, and it's a lot. And I know because you're out of London, right? And it's
Yeah, quite a bit out of London. I'm in Wales actually.
oh my
So
gosh, for some reason in my head I always, this is probably an American bias thing. But I think there's something else. Maybe you set something in London. So of course I just assume London. But yeah,
no,
of course,
I
obviously I
think
can.
it's like a bit of an American thing, because like when I talk about like say how far London is from here, like to an American that sounds like nothing, but like here in the UK that's like hours of travel.
No, and I know England enough to know that it's far. I mean, and it's one of those things that, again, I think the first time I hear someone and I just because you have a Welsh sounding like accent to now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, oh yeah, okay. But I mean, like anyway, apologies to your Welshness, because it's not the same. But no, so you're far enough. The point is, I guess you're far enough out of the States that it's a thing. But Heroes specifically is a show that I've fallen in love with because it's got so many creators there, and so little press, and so little what do you call it, media, celebrity, the sort of loss leaders, if you will, that a lot of shows do. So it's like a whole show that's artist alley is kind of like the mentality.
That sounds kind of awesome, actually. Yeah,
it really is. It really is. If Charlotte is ever something interests you, and it's a beautiful city, it's in North Carolina, which we won't hold it against them because North Carolina's got its issues, but it's a beautiful show. Anyway, so long story short, it's cool to see this all come together. Let's talk about some of your other stuff because you've done some amazing work that I actually really enjoyed. I have my copy of the Pride, like I said.
Thank you.
So when did the Pride come out? This was not 10 years ago, or a little after that?
So like, in terms of like the first sort of anything of it was probably around 10 years ago. But actually one of the shorts from the Pride Adventures issue 1 is actually one of the first things which ever came out, which we did as sort of like a teaser for a series which we were working on, and that was the It Gets Better short, which I did with Gabby Mitchell. And we did this like little preview flip book for my very first Comic Con. So that was about 10 years ago. So like Pride technically has been like a decade. And thank you for showing all the lovely artwork. But yeah, we then did, I think most people really became aware of it probably around the time we did the Kickstarter for the hardcover of the self-published version. So that was when I had what has now become known as Pride Season 1. So issue 1 to 6 of the Pride. And Pride Adventures 1 to 4, I think is in that book, if I remember correctly.
I believe so. Yes.
So yeah, so it was like 10 comics worth all in one book as a hardcover, and like that did really well on Kickstarter. I think that was my first Kickstarter. Again, it was my first Kickstarter, and it did way better than I was expecting. Surpassed all expectations. Like I think we ended on something like 100 and odd % funded, so it was great. And it sort of really built up the audience then. Obviously we had already had a few big steps, because obviously I put the book on ComiXology Submit as the issues were coming out, and the audience went from essentially being like a UK audience just from when I was doing UK Comic Cons to an international audience, because like I went to San Diego Comic Con maybe a year or so after the no, it would have been before the hardcover, year or so before the hardcover, and I was like astonished to find it was Vita Ayala of all people as well at a booth in San Diego. Who, when I introduced myself, she's like, "Oh my god!" And they were like, "Sorry, ugh."
I do it
They
too.
were like,
That's okay.
"Yeah, I hate."
Yeah.
They were like, "Oh my god, you write for Pride," and I was just like, "Oh my god, you heard of the Pride? Like, what the hell?" So yeah, that was a big step for us. Was getting it on ComiXology, and it boomed the audience to this international audience. So yeah, we kind of did the hardcover, which was maybe 5 years ago now, I think, something like that. It's got to be maybe like 4 or 5 years ago.
I got it from
Um,
you in 2017, and I think it had been out maybe a year or so before that. So yeah.
Boom. Yeah. See, that's crazy to think that was that long ago. Oh my god. Yeah. So we did the hardcover. I then did like a Kickstarter for a paperback version, and it was shortly after that, I believe, or it might have been just after we did Pride Adventures 5, that I was talking with ComiXology, because I've met a lot of them. They've been really supportive of the book when it was a submit title. Um, who actually sort of talked to them about maybe doing another season or a second story of it as a Comixology Originals, because at that point they started doing their originals lines of original content. And they were cool. They were like really awesome with it. They were really supportive, and yeah, out came Pride season 2 out of that. And it sort of became that was a very different sort of way of working on things, because the first season of the first Pride Adventures season as well, that took me like 6-7 years to get done, and we're talking about like by that point about 10 issues. So it feels almost like an issue a year, or something. And then like when we did Pride season 2, we completed it in a year. So like I to go from doing a 6-issue story arc over the course of like 4 or 5 years to doing it in a year was just like crazy to me.
Wow.
But yeah, it's become the sort of norm now, and now the next big thing is the Pride Omnibus, which is actually going to be everything which is in that hardcover, plus the Pride season 2, which has never been in print, because that was a digital only, digital first Comixology Originals title. So now Dark Horse Comics are going to do an omnibus version, which contains absolutely everything. So it's
Wow.
something like 450 odd pages. It's literally going to be massive. And it's coming out June 2nd, in time for Pride Month this year. People can order it now at their comic shop. If they just ask for the Pride Omnibus, they'll be able to find it in previews, page 103, which is the first time I've ever been in previews. So that's pretty
Oh,
amazing.
that's so awesome.
Oh,
That's
I like
great.
literally never ever been able to get into the whole like diamond thing. It's just always been a shame, because like, I've always wanted to see the Pride in comic shops. Like I've always wanted this book full of LGBTQ superheroes to be on comic shelves all over the world.
Absolutely.
But it's so hard to do when you're self-published and independent, and sort of because obviously I can't bite the bullet on postage so much, and obviously that's then going to affect whether a store can really logistically keep it. So yeah, it kind of meant that only a handful of stores have ever had the Pride on their shelves. But now, in theory, like every single comic shop in the world, and bookstores will be able to have it. And that is just like, this is going to make the book so much more accessible than it's ever
Absolutely.
been.
No, I
So
think
I'm like really excited for it.
this is huge, and you're right. I didn't realize that the Pride had never been on shelves, because I almost in my
Yeah.
brain, like I vividly remember, but maybe falsely, seeing it
Mm.
at my local comic shop at one point. But it's like you're saying, it's so hard. Our
Mm.
system of comic distribution is so, and not just comics. This is true for a lot of things.
Oh god, yeah.
So centralized, so
It's kind of
controlled.
generally a small business problem, you know. Any small business or independent creator of any kind, like even if they're making hot dog sauces or something, you know, it can be hard to get into like a supermarket or a chain which is really going to get you around to everyone.
Mhm.
So this is kind of feels like that. It kind of feels like finally I'm going to be in the chain. Everyone's going to be able to get it, and yeah, hopefully everyone who discovers it will love the Pride, just as everyone who already has seems to. So
Yeah, oh, it's fantastic, and it's a lot. I mean, I haven't read season 2. I remember that season 2 had come out, but I actually need to get that still on. I'm assuming it's still up on ComiXology, but I should just wait. I should just get the omnibus. I mean, honestly, that now that I know that that's got both, I'm like, I should just get that. You have so many fantastic artists, and I'm not going to list them all, but there's just so many, and that's what's kind of neat about the Pride is it's great. Not coming of age, but well, I guess it's a little bit of that, but like coming together as a chosen family, like you referred to earlier.
It felt amazing. It was never the initial intention. I think initially when we were starting to make it, the idea was Gavin Mitchell, the artist on the first couple issues, would be sticking around, but we were working on another comic as well, which we were doing with some friends, called Stiffs. And there was like some other stuff which he's obviously been working on. So it just kind of got to a point where it was just too much for one person to keep up with art wise, and then keep the book coming out. So that was when I started thinking, right, well, it's fine. You should focus on the other book, and we'll do. I'll get different artists, basically to do different issues and things, and it then sort of became like this community. Of people making a book, which was very much about a community. So it just kind of felt perfect and ideal in the end. And like I say, but most of the time it's like a different artist per issue. So you've got one artist per issue, with the exception of like one of those issues we decided, you know what, let's have fun with this format and just do like a jam piece. So it was like different artists doing different scenes. So yeah, it just worked out really well. Plus it meant I got to see different artists doing wonderful takes on the characters and just get a feel for them. So it's great.
I love that. I like the playfulness of the form when you have different collaborators and getting to see your world re-envisioned like so many times in rapid succession, relatively. You even, I know, do a story in there, which I know you're always very like sheepish about your artist skill, your drawing skills. But I mean, actually, it's a great little little one shot.
It was serviceable. It was serviceable. Let's say that.
Listen, put it this way: like you're a writer, and your background is more in the writing world, right?
Yeah.
So being able to express yourself visually, I know it helps your collaborative process. It has to be a great starting point with that conversation with an artist, but at the same time it's serviceable, but it's more than serviceable. It's a great, you do good storytelling, you do really good visual storytelling, even if admittedly it's like not photorealistic or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's good, and I'm really glad you got to do that in there. And
thank you so much. It was just a lot of fun to just get to flex that muscle. Like, it's one of those things for my own artistic talents, I've always considered myself to be okay, an artist at best, but a pretty terrible sequential artist. But like, to finally get to a point where it's just like, you know what, I'm gonna have a play with this one page and see how it goes, and if it worked okay, then I guess that does feel good. Plus, it was just getting to draw a drag queen putting their face on, which was just like so much fun to do. So yeah, I thank you very much for the kind words. It's very rare to get compliments on my artistic talent.
Oh, well, it's deserved, and I hope to see more of it. So I mean, I don't want to go through. I mean, there's a lot to the story. It's certainly worth exploring. Your characters, though, we should talk just a little bit, because they do give a nice sort of cross section of the queer community. So you've got, I mean, there's so many characters here. You got Angel, who does drag, right? Angel's the drag queen. You've got White Trash, which is sort of a burly, kind of, bruisery type guy. Cub, which I do admit to have a soft spot in my heart for Cub. You've got Muscle Mary, which is a freak. I mean, I love that name. And it's a playful, like, Wonder Woman trope, which is awesome. But African.
I think the idea was that she comes to the world of men for the first time, and it happens to be in a gay pride parade, and some queen just goes like, "Well, you're a real Muscle Mary."
That's such a great and honestly like earned name. You've got Wolf, and Wolf. Wolf is kind of interesting to me because at first I was getting like Wolverine vibes, which Wolf, Wolverine. But I think what's his name? Fab Man goes to like a bar and like meets up with him. Anyway, it just gave me X-Men, that bar that was always in Westchester that they would go hang out.
Yeah.
And then Wolverine, but he also kind of goes into sort of like a little bit of a Batman-y kind of thing too, right? But so it's an interesting kind of like a hybrid of tropes, which I like.
Yeah, it's like one of the things I wanted to do with the prize was play with the idea of stereotypes and archetypes and things like that. And Wolf actually is meant to be a combination of the Batman archetype and the Wolverine archetype of superheroes and like what the kind of stories they tell and things like that. And a big part of it, like say for me, was to challenge the idea, but well, it was twofold actually. The archetype thing, so like the fact that you've got like a very gay looking Superman and stuff like that, is because it meant then that you can have entirely brand new characters that people feel familiar with straight away. So you can kind of get on the ground running right away because like people kind of feel like they kind of know who these characters are, and then you can kind of play with that and sort of really surprise people by being like, actually, let's see how you make do with this. But then the stereotype thing for me was the fact that people are very negative again about stereotypes automatically, like the fact, like the idea that stereotypes are inherently bad or inherently evil. And I've never really felt that way. I kind of feel like stereotypes are not inherently wrong or inherently bad. It's how they're used, which is inherent, which is bad. So like that's why, like, obviously, what for me, one of the main characters always had to be a flamboyant, very in your face gay man who is super proud and super wears his sexuality on his sleeve. Because I'm pretty camp a lot of the time. I've got friends who are a lot camper than even I am, and I wear glitter when I go out. So it's kind of like, yeah, guess what? Camp people are important. They do exist, and while I can say that yeah, there was a stereotype that the camp guy was all you got to see for a long time. It's not his campness which we should be angry about and that we should be fighting against as a stereotype. It was more that idea of what a gay man was only ever presented as a sexless comedy device, and that was it. Like you could never see that kind of gay guy, or any kind of gay guy really, in most media as anything other than a sidekick or just a background comedy prop for a nudge nudge wink wink kind of comment from your lead character. And that is bad. That, and not because it implies that all gay men are like that, which is how some people take these things. It's like, that's why you should be angry when it implies all people are like this. That's not necessarily how you should be angry at things. It's more that that's not all we are. And it kind of it's belittling something which is someone's honest truth. So it was, for me, like, I wanted to take those stereotypes and play with them and even present them in a way that would have people get something unexpected out of it. Whether it be twisting that stereotype on his head a little bit, or whether it would be someone being like, oh, I hate that character because he's the absolute stereotype of what a gay man should be, and then actually reads the story and goes like, actually, I really kind of like him. I kind of get him. I kind of understand him. And plus, at the end of the day, like some of the biggest steps in gay rights have been done by flamboyant camp gay men. So
absolutely, and
I feel like it was important to show that.
Absolutely. Well, I think in one of the things, it might be Glitter Vipers, which we'll talk about. Pride is a riot, right? The first Pride was literally a riot, right? Going back to your conversation about archetypes, I agree completely. My boyfriend is a writer, and we talk about this a lot. The idea of a trope, the idea of an archetype, it's a visual, or in this case, it's a visual shorthand. It doesn't have to be visual; it can be written or whatever. But it's nice to put that out there as it like brings together everything in a quick, like, you don't have to explain as much at first. Exactly. But then it also gives you something to subvert later if you want to, like, put it out there and then sort of change a little bit, recontextualize, explain how he got there, whatever it is. It's a nice tool. And yeah, it's only bad when it's used reductively. It's only bad when it's used obviously as a slur or as a negative, thing. But it's useful. So I agree. I completely on the same page with you with this. I appreciate, again, because of consuming so much media that is not representative of who I am over my childhood, which is changing a lot. And so someone who picks this up now, who is used to a more, queer positive media representation, is going to be not as like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then you see that with queer comics, like going back into or gay comics, I should say. We'll talk about queer comics today. We'll talk about that. But gay comics, the anthologies from the 70s, 80s and on, that representation was so revolutionary. And it of course it used stereotypes. Of course it used things like that. But people were just craving it. And so, it's going to read a little differently depending on where you come out, what your age is. So.
There's also kind of there's like elements like whereas now like with the Pride, like I don't like to think of it as in any respect of like I have a regret on it, because I don't have regrets in respect of what I did, but in terms of if I was to make it now, it would probably be a bit different. I don't Fat Man would still absolutely be there and he'd still be front and center, but there would probably be a little bit more diversity of ethnicity involved, because certainly the first season is largely white, and that was a problem I noticed pretty immediately after sort of that first season came to an end, and was something I wanted to address in the second season, which we've ended on ComiXology, which introduced a bunch of brand new characters, and a lot of them were people of color, and plus it was looking at it from a cross-sectional point of view. So like they were people of color, but also they were other aspects of the queer community which maybe hadn't been seen yet. So we had a trans male superhero because we hadn't had a trans male character yet, and also trans male characters are next to invisible in media. Like there's generally, when a trans storyline is brought in, it's a trans woman that they're talking about. So like although we did that as well, obviously we have a trans female character in the book, I was like, well, we need a trans man too. And then naturally, just to me, was just like, well, if I'm going to add a new character that's out in this other aspect of the LGBTQ community, which we haven't seen yet, it's going to be a person of color, because I've already got a bunch of white guys. I don't need another one.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
It was just, except I did have one other white guy in that I added a Welsh character, because of course I'm going to add a Welsh character.
Yeah, absolutely, as well you should. No, I think trans representation is really hard. If for our viewers, I'm sure you've seen this. There's a great documentary we've talked about before called Disclosure.
Oh, I love
Netflix.
that. Yeah, it's so good.
And what is great about it is you sort of learn that trans individuals have been around for a long time, and that shouldn't be a surprise, but to some people it is. And you just didn't know that they were trans, and that's actually valid and fine. So again, talking to my boyfriend about writing queer characters, one of the ideas is having a trans man or trans woman character, they are men or women, and you can write them as such. And only at some point, if you want to make it a thing, can you if the story demands it. But it's also nice to have very telegraphed, outspoken representation.
Oh, totally. And I'd say that we're all as creators, we're all learning as we're going as well. We're not like some perfect beings who know the correct way to handle everything from the get-go. I mean, like for God's sake, just in conversation, I accidentally let the wrong pronoun slip out. Like it just happens, mistakes happen. So it's just one of those things. Like the story of the Pride even sort of evolved over time. Like in particular, like talking about one of the trans characters, like the story for Frost evolved from when I initially had planned it. Initially, like her nature as a trans woman was going to be like a big reveal and make a big thing of it. And I kind of got to the point, and sort of with talking with trans colleagues and trans friends, that that's done to death, and it shouldn't just be like the reveal. So instead, her trans story became about something else, and it's a big part of season 2. Actually, it was more about having her identity used against her, as opposed to like making it the focus of the story, in the respect of like, it was no longer the focus was her transness. It was so much how other people, outside people, sometimes take our identities and use them against us. And I felt that was also more universally understandable, because even as gay men, even white gay men, we can have times where our identity is used against us. So I felt that was something, and even non-queer people, I'm sure have had at that time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a
So I felt it
universal
was something which
idea.
was more universally understood, and I felt sometimes having a story which a way into a story like that can be useful, because, like say, as much as I'm still learning, there's plenty the readers sometimes are still learning as well. So being able to present to people who maybe don't get to see these kind of things on a daily basis, like I do as part of the LGBT groups and stuff, then great. Yeah, it gives them a chance to maybe consider a point of view they'd never thought of before.
Yeah, no, that's important. I really, yeah, you said it very well. I won't repeat what you said. So let's move on to Glitter Vipers, because Glitter
Cool.
Vipers is a work that is so incredibly different than
Yeah.
the Pride, in a way that I was actually a little like shell shocked, not in a bad way, but it just not. And again, everything shouldn't be the same from a writer.
No,
But
totally,
to
yeah.
me, when I saw this cover, I was thinking, oh, okay, cool. It's just a little more like street level superhero-y kind of comic, and then you get into the meat of the story, and it starts with, so I do appreciate you do have some trigger warnings in the comic, which is very
Yeah,
important,
totally.
because there's some, obviously challenging topics.
Hmm.
The story starts very badly for the people we care
Yeah.
about in this
It
issue.
was pretty heavy. It's probably one of the heavier things I've written. But like it's what was really weird about this was to see how people sort of really fell behind this idea really quickly. Like I think literally the first thing I ever showed of it was the logo, and people adored it and like immediately wanted to know like what is this thing like and stuff, which is awesome. But like it did mean that I kind of wanted to be like straight up honest with things, and that's why there's trigger warnings on there. But this is a story which actually starts from a pretty dark place and deals with some very heavy things, but then still kind of has fun in a way. So it was just kind of, it was also me not wanting to do superheroes. A comic creator colleague of mine was like very much like, you should really not do superheroes, because weirdly, if you want to work at Marvel DC, they don't want to see you doing superheroes, which is weird because they want you to write superheroes. So
Right.
yeah. But yeah, so I was thinking like I need to do a non-superhero story, and the don't worry, not COVID. And it kind of where did it come from? I think I was on a train to work or something, and I was reading a news story about someone who got assaulted for being gay on a bus or something, and it made me really angry, and it made me think about how I would love nothing more than to have that person who did that to someone and just punch them, like, which is a very it's something which a reaction which we kind of always have put down, but you shouldn't feel that way, you shouldn't do this. Excuse me, sorry, I should have brought a drink up here. um and it's often used against the queer community. But also I'm really sorry, I've got to get a drink.
No. Well, you do that. Let me talk a little bit about it, because I think if you know what Antifa is, or you have seen things like there's this Queer as Folk, the American version storyline about, I think it was the Pink Posse or the Pink Panthers or something.
Yeah.
Like, it's essentially this sort of same idea where a group of queer individuals, or in Antifa's case, not necessarily queer, basically go, the problem we have here is that there is a power imbalance, and there's violence being applied to a community that is a little bit more exposed, a little bit less able to organize and defend themselves. And we need a way to push back on that power imbalance, and in a way that is reactive. Like, we're not sending necessarily at first a group like Glitter Vipers out to hunt down fascists, and certainly that's not the rules of Antifa or any of the other kind of things. It's more of like and really even going further back, like it's a vigilante sort of like reactionary patrolling.
It came from a kind of the idea of grindhouse cinema, and how a lot of that is fantasy wish fulfillment. Like no one watches a Grindhouse cinema and thinks, no one, sane, watches Grindhouse cinema and goes like, I need to do that.
Right.
But no one can deny that watching it happen to the bad guy feels fantastic.
Inglorious Bastards is another great example. I mean, in that case, it's
exactly.
literal Nazis that but it's that, right? It's like that revenge porn, if you will. Not like I guess revenge porn can be something else too, but like that, yeah, just getting enjoyment of this visceral like revenge against someone who deserves to be, at least to have their comeuppance, if not have their same violence applied to them. And that's what I like.
And like, how many times have us in the queer community, or like any minority community, to be fair, I mean, obviously last year and around the time the book wound up going on Kickstarter, which obviously was in no way planned, because how could it be planned, the Black community and the Black Lives Matters protests, how often do we find our anger being confronted as being unjustified or being the wrong route to take, and that you shouldn't be angry, you should take the high road or something like that. Just like, well, why have I got to take the high road? Like, why does he get to do that to me, but I've got to take the high road? And that was kind of where the book came from, was just me feeling like, no superheroes, let's do a world which is so like ours, and have this awful thing happen, and sometimes how you just want that most primal reaction, and how you have a justified reason to feel that. And the way I feel like we did the book was that we never, although it's wish fulfillment, it never kind of glorifies the violence. It kind of, even though like it's led by a drag queen with a sequined baseball bat, it's never really glorified. But the violence is something they struggle with.
I like that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And it was kind of, for me, that was a kind of a evolution of the story as well, in that like it was hard for me to get to a point where I felt like, yeah, I feel this way, but there's an aspect of who they, what they're doing, what they're fighting, is like, is that really helpful to them? And sort of having to sort of almost deconstruct that in a way. In what I call this glitter noir neon grindhouse story.
So the work was on Kickstarter and obviously funded and came out. And I remember getting my I did the PDF because I was moving, and it was a whole thing where I'm like, I don't need any more books. But the art. So principal art was Katie Fleming.
Katie Fleming did the interiors. Cover was James Gifford. We had colors by Kelly Fitzpatrick. Letters by Lucas Catoni. And we had Ted Grant editing the book. So that was also my first time working directly with an editor, which was really great. He really sort of helped bring the story conciseness and together, which was awesome. And like a big thing of that one was, I felt for that particular kind of story, it meant we needed like an all queer creative team. So yeah, it was essentially a queer creative team doing this queer ass book, which hopefully a lot of people have been enjoying. The hardest part has been naturally with everything that's going on. We haven't had Comic-Cons to go and take the book to and show. Obviously it's available at my website, and if people want digitally, it's available on ComiXology now too. But yeah, it's been difficult. It would have been nice. I would have loved to have this at Comic-Cons. What can I say? It's like when the book finally came out, it would have been tied in for Thought Bubble, which is the big Leeds show here. Like that. Well, it's Harrogate now, but like that would have been amazing to have that. But hopefully next year.
And you have pins. At least you did produce pins at some point. So I hope you have some of those. And then patches now, right? Now, you had patches. Didn't somebody create?
Yes, the original Kickstarter for which was for the book. There was options for patches as well, and I've actually got a few left, but I can't remember if I've got them on the website. No, yeah, they're on the website too. Because there's literally just like a handful of them left. So I was like, you know what, put them up there if anyone would love an iron-on patch.
Great.
So yeah, they're available too. And obviously it's all available internationally. I will post out to anywhere.
Yay.
So yeah, there's always that option.
And you had
Um,
one more book that I wanted to quickly reference, and then I gotta wrap things up.
yeah, sure.
It had just come out at the beginning of the pandemic as well.
Yeah, we kickstarted it in 2019. It finally sort of got ready to print like literally just at the start of last year. So it was Acceptable Losses, which was me wanting to do something different in the sense it's still a superhero story, but it's a very different kind of superhero story. So it's very grim and gritty. It's very political. It's very, I don't want to say highbrow. That kind of sounds um wankery. So I kind of don't want to say that, but it's a little bit more thought provoking. So yeah, it was a book we came out. I want to say February last year. So obviously then COVID hit, and basically yeah, it's been out. Never, excuse me, never had a chance to go to Comic-Con, but hopefully next year.
You'll have a lot to table when you get back there. Hopefully next year. So let's. I want to circle back around because this is kind of right around the time this Kickstarter for the Miracles comes out. So if you want to back the Miracles, you should go to this link down here. It's Kickstarter.com projects Joe Glass the Miracles, and of course, there's easier ways to find it than that, but that is certainly one way. Then you have your website, of course, which is glasscomics.com or .co.uk. Sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Queer Comics, real quick. I did note this your imprint. This is your like sort of your own imprint.
Yeah, it's had a weird evolution. It basically was a slight misunderstanding on my part. I thought I needed a publisher logo to put the books on ComiXology Submit. It never occurred to me that I could just be my name. So I created a fake comics imprint. So that was Queer Comics, and then since then, like all my books I've just put under Queer Comics. So it's kind of gradually growing into becoming essentially a line of comics, which are just basically all the books which I've written. Basically, as far as I'm concerned, anything I independently create is going to be a Queer Comics comic. So like if I ever do work for Marvel and DC, so who knows? Obviously they wouldn't, but like anything I'm doing, that's going to be a Queer Comics.
Oh, that's I think that's smart. I mean, Bendis has Jinx World, and
Yeah.
a lot of people do that, so I think that makes total sense. And then the Miracles, which again, we'll put the link back up here. Kickstarter. I'm very excited to see this come out. I'm very excited to hear all the news that's going to accompany it as far as your who's doing your covers and all the various backing levels. Those are always kind of a neat thing to see how creators figure out how to make that work and entice extra money out of their
it's been a bit of an evolution on that part as well. Like I've kind of, because obviously the world's changed even since the last time I did a Kickstarter. So like obviously now we've got Brexit and everything else which has happened. So you kind of I had to get involved with a American distribution channel so that I can keep American postage as low as possible. So like if anything, it's actually lower than it's been in the past on my Kickstarters. So hopefully makes it even more accessible to more people. So fingers crossed. Hopefully we'll all go well.
I'm that's such a unfortunate problem to have to deal with, but I'm glad you found a solution because I've heard nothing but that from other people who are dealing with Brexit.
Yeah, it's probably the biggest problem going around with crowdfunding books at the moment. So,
oh gosh. And then right after this interview, when this comes out, we will have an interview with Vince Underwood. So that's Vince's website, and then also if you're watching on YouTube, you should see that pop up. I'll have it pop up directly to go to that video, so you can see that. Also, if you're enjoying what we're doing here, please go to our YouTube channel, Flame On Show, and like and subscribe and do the little follow button because that always, gets your notifications when we put new content up. And Joe, I know you're doing a YouTube channel. I don't have a link handy to it, but is it off of your website? Do you have a link off there yet?
You've just made me realize I don't. I need to work on that. So yeah, hopefully by the time this goes out, I'll have a link on my website as well. But yeah, I kind of it's just something I'm doing for a bit of fun where I've got a little extra time here and there. So like it's nothing too regular, nothing too frequent. Won't necessarily have weekly updates, but I will have new videos when I have new videos. And it's mainly kind of just having positive reviews of books I'm enjoying. So like I'm actively not reviewing on video anything I read and I didn't enjoy. because I feel like there's enough of that out there.
Absolutely. And
So for me, like, my channel's going to be about positivity. So
I appreciate that. I try to do that more than not. I think every
yeah,
now and again something slips through where, like, we circling back to Gotham.
yeah,
I have a video, or actually it's just audio out there with Comic Book Bears, where it was literally me just bashing Gotham for all of like 10 minutes, and somewhat, inebriated while before I did this. But in general, like there's a certain thing for that. That's not what I want to focus on. So I'm really happy to have people like yourself who are doing amazing queer comics, literally. And I am so excited for the miracles. So again, please go to Joe's website, joeglasscomics.co.uk. And the Kickstarter will be out when this is up. So we will link all of that over to that page through our social media. And yeah, Joe, thank you again so much for being
thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Thank you.